Hey, sixth grade. Today we're going to get started on writing equivalent ratios, lesson 5.3. It's writing equivalent ratios, lesson 5.3. And you need to make sure that you have your binder so you can take notes, as well as page 324 from the textbook. We would have torn that out today in class and put that page into our binders. So, your learning goals, which you need to make sure you write in your binders, we have two, and they're really short. So number one is, today I will write ratios, and number two, I will scale up and down with ratios. All right, there you go. I will write ratios and I will scale up and scale down ratios. Make sure you pause so you have enough time to get your learning goals for today written. And here is your one vocabulary word for today. Your vocab word for today is rate. And a rate is a ratio that compares two quantities that are measured in different units. A rate is a ratio that compares two quantities that are measured in different units. And I'm going to give you a few examples that I want you to make sure you include in your notes. When we take a look at our first example, we can tell that we are keeping track of two different units, because this ratio is showing that we are keeping track of, we're comparing miles to hours. In this example, we are comparing the number of problems solved to the length of time it takes to solve those problems. So if someone can do 5 problems in 3 minutes, how many minutes is it going to take them to do just one problem? And in this final example, we are comparing gallons to the number of miles traveled. And if you figure out how many gallons this person is using to go every mile, you're going to see that they are driving a gas guzzler because they are not getting very good mileage with this vehicle. Your next vocabulary word is proportion. That's kind of a big long one. Proportion. And a proportion is an equation that states that two rates are equal. It's an equation that states that two rates are equal. Make sure you get that in your notes. Here's just one example of a proportion. 8 miles to every 16 hours is also equal to 10 miles in every 20 hours. And here's another example of a proportion for you to make sure you put in your notes. 1 gallon to every 10 miles traveled is also equal to 3 gallons of gas, I'm assuming, to every 30 miles traveled. Make sure you get that in your notes. Okay, something important for you to remember is that numbers representing the same quantity or the same amount must be written in both numerators and both denominators. That'll be important with all of this proportion, rate, ratio, whatnot that we're working on. All right, I have 2 more vocabulary words for you all to include in your notes. Your third vocabulary word in this lesson is scaling up. And now what's important about scaling up that you have to remember, because it's different from scaling down, which will be your next vocabulary word. When you are scaling up with ratios, you multiply, whoops, and I didn't spell that right. There you go. You multiply the numerator and the denominator by the same factor. So how I remembered it was, when you're moving up, the numbers are getting bigger. Well, when you multiply, your numbers also get bigger. And that was how I was able to remember the difference between scaling up and scaling down. What in the world? Why will it not pause? All right, and your last vocabulary word, scaling down. Scaling down is the opposite of scaling up. When you're scaling down and you want your numbers to get smaller, you are going to divide. So, scaling down is when you divide the numerator and denominator by the same factor. Okay, let's take a look at page 324. And if you need to hit pause so you can flip to that page in your binder, go for it, because we're going to do a little work with page 324. So, in order to solve all of these quiz bowl problems, you're going to have to do both scaling up and scaling down. So, let's start. We should be on question number 1. Let's start by writing each student's number of problems correct compared to the total number of problems. So that means we're going to be doing some part to whole comparisons. So we'll start with Maria. Whoops. She answered 6. Whoa, where's she going? Maria answered 6 out of 15 problems correct. And then Tony answered 4 out of 12 problems correct. Anita did, where is she? 3 out of 10 problems. And Carlo has 9 out of 24 problems answered correctly. So far, so good? So, the table is giving us an example of rate by comparing, and this is the table in your book, not what I have right here. Sorry. Anywho, the table is giving us an example of rate because the table that's there at the top of your book is comparing correct answers to incorrect answers. Okay, so on to question number 2. Which student should represent the 6th grade in the big quiz bowl? Well, in order to solve this, you are going to have to do a little, or probably a lot, of fraction work. So we have to find a common denominator. Actually, no, we're going to do something before we get to common denominators. First of all, we are going to reduce the fractions that need reducing. So let's see here. 6 over 15, well, 3 goes into both of those, so we're going to reduce that down to 2/5. Tony, 4 can go into both 4 and 12. And so go, wow, let's fix that so I have a little bit better handwriting. There we go. So Tony's going to have 1/3. Anita's, we can just leave her score the same. And then with Carlo, 3 goes into 9 3 times, and it goes into 24 8 times. And then we need to find a common denominator that both 5, 3, 10, and 8 can go into. And that is going to be a pretty big one. It's going to be 120. So let's get that written for all 4 of our ratios. Hopefully you guys are writing this neater in your notes than I am on this screen. All right, so let's see here. 5 goes into 120 24 times. 2 times 24 is 48, so we wind up with 48 over 120. 3 goes into 120 40 times. 40 times 1 is, boom, 40. 10 goes into 120 12 times. 12 times 3 is 36. And then for Carlo, down here, 8 goes into 120 45 times. No, that's not right. It goes in there 15 times. Yep. 15 times 3 is 45. There we go. I was jumping ahead a bit. So, after we figure out all of our numerators, we can figure out which student we should choose to represent the 6th grade class at the quiz bowl. Now we take a look. Maria got 48 out of 120, Tony 40, Anita 36, and Carlo 45. Which one of these kids should be representing the 6th grade at the quiz bowl? If you say Maria, you are correct. Why should we choose Maria? We should choose her because she has the greatest ratio of correctly answered problems. Now, question number 3 tells us to list the students in order from the best results down to the worst. So let's take a look at all of our work in here again. Who do you guys think we should start with? Well, obviously we're going to start with Maria. She's the one representing our 6th grade at the Quiz Bowl, so she has the most. Let's see who comes in second place. Looks like Carlo is coming in second when we compare the numbers. And then all we have left is Tony and Anita. Well, Tony answered 40 questions compared to Anita's 36. So Tony is third, and then Anita comes in at last place. So when we were doing all of our work here with our ratios, we can see that we've scaled up because we had to do some multiplying. We also scaled down because we had to divide. So we're getting all kinds of examples of our vocabulary words in this lesson. When we divided the numerators and the denominators by the same number, when we were reducing our fractions, we scaled down. When we were trying to find our like denominator and had to do some multiplying so we could figure out the numerator, the number on the top, we were scaling up. So that's it for today. Make sure you bring your binder with your notes, page 324, and any other work examples you might have to class with you. See y'all soon.